This is the story of a teenage girl in council care. Failed by a system which can't cope, she's vulnerable and alone.
She's shut up, she's not heard, she's not listened to. Becky is in an awful lot of danger.
She's 14 years old and says she's forced to sleep with men who ply her with drink and drugs.
She was expected to pull herself away from the most terrifying number of serious sexual predators.
She begs for help, but nobody's listening.
I hate those bastards.
And she's just one of possibly thousands being failed by the care system.
The care system doesn't protect young people from sexual exploitation. The outcome for many children and young people is really very poor.
Good evening. In tonight's Real Stories special, we uncover the shocking story of a 14-year-old girl living in a care home and the system that's failed to protect her from paedophiles and other abusers. During the course of a 6-month investigation, the BBC gained access to her case files. They reveal a catalogue of mistakes and highlight a host of missed opportunities to help her. The scenes you're about to see are based on fact, though some details like names and dialogue have been changed to protect the girl's identity. We've called her Becky and dramatised her descent into drug-taking and abuse. Sadly, it's a familiar path followed by many in care, ending up on the streets as prostitutes. At the heart of this film is one girl's story, but we've made it for the hundreds of other Beckys who could be out there tonight. Becky first became known to social services soon after she was born. Her mother had a history of alcoholism and suffered from depression and found it difficult to cope.
Happy now. It's not me they're meant to keep happy.
Her father left before she was born, but she had a stepfather from an early age. It wasn't a happy home.
He's been at it again, you know.
Don't start with that crap.
It's not crap. He touches me.
Look at you. As if he'd go anywhere near a scrawny little cow like you.
But do you know you're off your head half the time?
I'm not listening.
You and him deserve each other.
Oh, that's right. Have a tantrum.
If he comes near me again, I'm gonna have the bastard.
You're the one should be taking the pills.
You won't look it up!
What am I supposed to do with all this down here, eh? We'll clean itself up. Selfish cow.
According to the Children's Society, an estimated 100,000 children under 16 run away every year. It's a frightening statistic, but one which is all too familiar to former social workers Nora Duckett and Liz Davies. They're two of Britain's leading authorities in social work and have been involved in some of the biggest child abuse inquiries in the country. We gave Liz and Nora access to Becky's confidential file, which we obtained during the course of our investigation. We didn't tell them who Becky was or where she was from. We then asked them to produce a detailed analysis of her case.
She made numbers of different allegations about her stepfather in relation to sexual abuse, inappropriate touching and comments that he'd made about her, but also it escalated to talking about rape and violence.
As a result of those allegations that Becky made, what we would have expected to have happened was that the social worker that would have taken the first call would have set off a procedure we generally call a child protection procedure. It seems from very early on she wasn't believed.
Becky is interviewed by the police's child protection unit. Details of the interview are reported in Becky's case file.
Right, Becky, we're going to start by stating who's here, the date, that sort of thing. Just for the camera, okay? The touching and the things you said, did that happen every day?
My bum. He put his hand on my bum.
How often?
All the time.
What did your mum have to say?
I've told you, she's pissed and she's mental.
So your mum doesn't comment?
He's kissed me. Forced me to kiss him. My mum hits me. She knows what he's like. And all she does is hit me. I tried telling him to fuck off and she pushes me down the stairs. It's not right that they can do that to me. Is it?
She's off her head. Cracked like her mum.
She says that you touched her bum and that you made inappropriate remarks about her breasts.
She's lying.
You're saying these things never happened?
I've not laid a finger on her. She makes stuff up. I mean, there's always a bit of banter around ours, you know. Me and her mum. But you know, that's all it is. Talking. I admit I might have said things I shouldn't have. Stuff about sex and that. But I've never touched her. I mean, what she says, it's all bollocks. She does it for the attention.
End of interview.
Despite her stepfather's partial admission of inappropriate behaviour towards his 14-year-old stepdaughter, the case is dropped. Police say there isn't enough evidence to proceed.
Your statement.
If a child is actually saying something, we really, really must listen, because we know that, you know, it's unusual and that we must give them all the benefit of the doubt.
She's not believed by the professionals around her, and they then believe that the best place for her is to return home. And she doesn't think that. She's telling us she's in danger there and she's not returning home. So what this is doing is making her more vulnerable.
With her allegations dismissed and now feeling even more vulnerable, Becky decides to leave home. She goes to stay with one of her mother's friends.
She's been down the cops, pissed, talking shite about Keith, saying she won't stay here, getting the bloody social on us. She'll do a runner again, go shouting her mouth off.
I'm ready.
You're gonna piss them about like you have me?
Evil cow, you're not even fit to have kids. Should have sent you away years ago.
I'll call you. Me and Dave will look after her. Tell Keith it'd be okay.
Don't tell that bastard anything.
He'd be worried.
Yeah, worried that I'll get him done. I'm so never going back to that shithole ever again.
Come on, let's get you home. Have a drink, okay? Dave's been down the office.
Great.
When police and social services learn that Becky is staying at Leslie's, they're happy she's somewhere they believe is safe.
Where's hers?
They're a bit plain though. What do you think?
What they don't realise at this stage is that Leslie is living with a convicted sex offender. What's more, the offender in question, Dave Grant, has a particular interest in young girls.
Dave is known to the police as a Schedule 1 offender for sex crimes, and also for procuring women to get into sex work and prostitution. And, you know, alarm bells are ringing. What would they do in this situation, you know? But it seems that very little's done.
I really like them ones. No, there's other bars.
Dave Grant also has convictions for rape and sexual assault, but the right checks haven't been made yet. Becky is probably in more danger now than ever before.
I'll treat you.
It doesn't take long for her to realise her predicament.
They're all liars. Can't even trust them.
Thought you were your mates.
Not my mates. Mum's and Keith's mates. It's just like being at home. She's an alky and he's a perv. It's worse than my stepdad.
Go to the cops then.
There's no point. Tell them about that bastard at home and all they do is let him go. First, they tell me that I'm lying, and then they try sending me home. As if.
I'd so tell that Dave to do one.
Can't, can I? Just won't stay there all the time. Been dossing at the Archers. that's full of druggies and tramps. Safer there than at home. Doesn't your mum go to spare? Like she gives a shit. Don't want me, Trace. I'll kiss my ass.
The charity Bernarda's helps thousands of children who are sexually exploited, but they say the scale of the problem is massively underestimated. They're also concerned that many children, just like Becky, are let down by poor coordination between the different agencies. How common do you think cases like Becky's are?
Every year we are helping 2,000 young people who are being exploited in this way. And that's across the United Kingdom, and that's only in the small pockets where we have enough money to help those young people. So you can imagine the numbers of young people who are at risk of exploitation, who are not getting the help they need.
BBC reporter David Akinsanya knows better than most. He grew up in care and has seen dozens of casualties, girls just like Becky, who ran away from home and became easy targets for abusers. As part of our investigation, David met with dozens of victims. You've been out talking to girls, working girls, on the street. What have you found?
A lot of them get kind of forced into relationships where they're relying on older guys, who I would call paedophiles, who are kind of preying on these young girls, giving them security, giving them somewhere to stay and maybe drugs and drink.
So they've been abused, at home?
Yeah.
And then have had to leave home because of it?
Exactly. I mean, either by a relative or by someone around the family. So they've managed to kind of cut off their feelings for sex, and that's how they can go in to become sex workers.
And if these girls are underage, I mean, isn't anyone out there looking for them, like social services or, some kind of safety net to catch them?
I mean, there are projects in some of the bigger cities, but I think in most towns there isn't anything to actually support these young girls. If they're missed by social services, then pretty much they're on their own. And if they haven't got caring parents who care whether they come home at night, then they're just going to be out there.
This isn't drama. This is the reality of life on the back streets of Manchester for 23-year-old Rachel.
Business, love. Sure about that?
She started sleeping with older men when she was just 14 years old. She was forced to work as a prostitute a year later.
Don't ever go away, oh, yeah, yeah, 'cause I never meant to cause you no pain.
I always thought I was going to be a singer. I remember being at that age and I was just a little character. I could just sing all day, you know what I mean? I really thought I would be famous. People say to me, now you're not meant to be on the street, you're not meant to be on drugs, you're not meant to be this, and I think, I sort of feel myself that I'm not meant to be there, do you know what I mean? Because I know I'm a nice person, too nice for the street, but that's where I've ended up. That's me. She's got the rounder face, I've got the more oblong.
Yeah. How does it feel looking back at these photographs when you think about your life back then? They're beautiful children.
I know, cute, aren't we? I know. I suppose when I look back I feel a bit sad because, I changed, but I don't know.
Rachel, here on the right with her twin sister, grew up in the Miles Platting area of Manchester. Her father left home before she was born.
If you looked at those without knowing your story, you would say, this is a child who's had a happy childhood, look at her, she's always smiling, but the truth is different, isn't it? How did you get from that to where you are now?
I don't know, I got put in care about 2 years after that, and then I just changed. Things just changed. It's all right when you're at home, innit? I was at home then. That was my mum's house. I was still living with my mum until then. And then after then I went into care.
The first time I had a crack, I was pregnant at the time. I met this guy on the street and I'd seen him loads of time. And he was with a girl who was really pissed, and she was on drugs and they were taking, and I thought, why are you taking that? And I asked him, and he said, because it's nice. And I went, well, what does it feel like? And they went, why don't you try it? And they actually give it me.
And how old were you then?
15.
Rachel's crack and heroin addiction now rules her life. She sells her body to pay for it. Still a child, Becky is starting out on the same journey.
Want some? Got in it.
Get off!
What's your problem, eh?
Get the fuck off me!
Hey, this is my fucking weed and my drink. What are you here for then? Slag.
You can have a laugh with him, you know. Share a bit of weed. Chill a bit. I've done loads of stuff. And if you get a bit pervy, you just tell him to back off. It's no big deal.
Rejected by those she's turned to for help, Becky becomes increasingly vulnerable to other sexual predators. She says she's being abused at home, abused on the streets, and abused by Dave Grant. But she still keeps going back.
We can see here a child who's craving of affection, perhaps craving to be cared for, to be loved. She's not receiving that at home as far as we know. And so an abuser comes into her life and he offers her something that she's not getting elsewhere. He's offering her love. She may feel that her self-esteem is building. She feels good perhaps initially with this person. And then he builds a dependency. He introduces drugs into her life. He points out that there isn't anyone else that she can rely on.
The authorities know Becky is in danger, but little changes. Desperate for somebody to listen to her, she begins making stories up and gains a reputation for being a fantasist.
It's very easy for a child to get labelled. And once they're labelled as a liar, as manipulative, as, you know, making things up to get attention, being attention-seeking, then it's a way professionals can write the case off. They can just blame the child for every aspect. Everything that's going on is the child's fault. So all the interventions are focused on the child. If only the child would behave herself, if she wouldn't go missing. And the perpetrators stay invisible, which is exactly what they want.
Desperate and unheard, Becky begins drinking more and more and using more drugs.
Now and again I do.
Rachel remembers the same thing happening to her nearly a decade ago.
You've got every day to deal with.
Yeah. I was going weeks and weeks staying at my friends' houses and things like that, and it got to a point where people were saying, "Haven't you got home, Rachel?" And I'd tell them, "I'm running away from my children's home, I don't like it." But there's only so much people can do, you know. And I was actually living on the street, staying on the street. And one day I remember it raining. I said, "Haven't you got anywhere at all?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a guy." And they took me to a guy. And that's how it all started off. I started staying there. I felt like I had to have sex with him because I couldn't give him anything else. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I loved him or anything, it was just I'm simply going with him because I was staying there, really.
But it was an abusive relationship, wasn't it? Because he was, how old was he?
A lot older. 22 years older.
And you were how old?
15 at the time, yeah.
circumstances? I mean, you were living on the street, you were homeless, you had no money. What else? What other options were there for you?
I don't know, love. Really don't know.
The more vulnerable girls like Rachel and Becky become, the more abusers there are who target them.
Abusers are extremely cunning, and they will know what the needs of the child are. An abuser will notice, if they're looking at a whole playground of children, they'll notice the child who's vulnerable in that way. They'll home in on that young person. So then once they've captured them like a spider on the web, then they will give the child messages that are very confusing, responding to their needs, sometimes positively, and at the same time it goes hand in hand with the abuse, and the young person becomes very confused and doesn't know what love is, and doesn't know what's abuse and what's love.
Becky is growing increasingly concerned about the number of abusers in her life.
Yeah. Are you going back to the Arches again tonight? Nah, those bastards like the rest. Kept trying it on. I mean, I've done it loads of times, but it just got a bit too heavy. Did he rape you? Tried the fucking hardest. Called the cops. Thought you weren't going to bother? Yeah, that was before. So I'm getting a bit too on top now, you know. Might have to go back to Dave and Leslie's. You can't! Well, didn't you grass him up or something? That was last week. He had a bit too much to drink. When you say you've called the cops, he calms down, and I can really handle him then. It'll be all right.
She's still only 14, but Becky hasn't been home for weeks. She's supposed to be staying at Leslie and Dave's, but they haven't been in touch either. So Becky's mum and stepdad report her missing. By now, the police are aware that Dave Grant has a record for sex offences. They go to the flat he shares with Leslie.
Mr. Grant in? Dave Grant. Mr. Grant! Dave Grant!
Despite finally realising that Dave Grant is a sex offender and that Becky has been staying at his flat, all the police do is write to him and tell him to stay away. Not long after this, Becky tells police he's raped her. But despite his record, the case is dropped through lack of evidence.
Told them he fucking raped me. Why didn't you go home? No point. They knew what he was like.
Once again, Becky's version of events is rejected.
I think because she hadn't been heard around the stepfather, and she hadn't been heard about some of her earlier allegations about other people, she began to, I detect a pattern where she begins to give up a bit and say, well, I'm not telling you anymore, or I'm not going to be interviewed, I'm certainly not going to be medically examined. Well, then that gives a picture of her as an uncooperative young person, but really she's just had enough, and she doesn't trust the system anymore to protect her.
5 months after learning that Becky has been spending time with a known sex offender, social services finally hold a child protection conference and acknowledge the threat. During that meeting, social services and the dozen or so other agencies that attended acknowledged that Becky was very vulnerable. They knew she'd been found at the home of a sex offender and that she'd alleged he'd raped her. They recognised that she was afraid of him, but continued to go to his house because she was worried he'd be violent towards her if she didn't. The sexual risk to Becky, they admitted, was extremely high.
If they're not being heard when they're overtly saying, I'm being raped, I'm being sexually abused, then what are they going to do to tell us? They're going to run away, they're going to self-harm, they're going to abuse alcohol and drugs, they're going to expose themselves to very risky situations with other possible perpetrators.
She talks about various men in, I think there was something like 25 named, she alleges 25 named people in her life that are abusing her, which is enormous, you know. And just this sense of her not being protected. She's really out there and she's letting people know what's happening to her.
Becky!
Becky's name is placed on the Child Protection Register, but little in her life changes.
Leave me alone.
She's told to go home again, despite her fears about her stepfather. She's just as vulnerable now as she was before. Increasingly desperate to be heard, she's crying out for help by cutting herself.
Mad cow. Bastard perv. I fucking hate those bastards.
Finally, nearly 6 months after it's recognised that Becky is at serious risk, the files reveal that social services find her a place in a children's home.
Hi, I'm Sarah. You okay? Here we go. Luxury, eh? This is Becky.
Hi. Welcome.
You don't tell me what to do, wankers! Bastards!
Too many E numbers. It gets a bit past it.
Come on, I'll show you to your room.
Not our nut jobs, are they?
Only the staff. Look, you'll be okay here, I promise. It's pizza movie night tonight. We like to treat ourselves every now and then.
I like Hawaiian.
Hawaiian it is then?
Rachel remembers her first children's home.
That's my nanny's twin sister. I was more influenced off other girls already in the kids' home. I think kids' homes are a lot worse than foster homes because kids in kids' homes seem to be a lot worse. Do you know what I mean? That's why they're there, because no foster home wants to. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to be the problem. And then they're that bad, especially lads. And if you get involved in that sort of group, you end up in bad company. I don't think you're ever happy where you're placed in care, you know. You just want to be with your own mum.
Do you remember the first time you did this? Stood on the street?
Yeah, I was about 15.
And you've been doing it ever since?
Yeah, every day.
Why don't you stop? Why can't you stop?
Because I'm on drugs. I need money for drugs. I have an habit.
You're freezing. How long will you stand out here tonight?
It depends, as long as it takes. Got to wait for somebody to stop. Sometimes I'm out 10, 15 minutes, other times I'm out hours. Lately it's been really quiet.
What time will you work till tonight?
Early hours in the morning.
2, 3?
3, 4, yeah, normally. And then I just wait until the dealer turns on at 9, because after 3 you can't score then.
So you work here until you can get your last score?
Yeah.
And then where will you sleep? You don't know?
Anywhere.
Almost as soon as Becky arrives at her children's home, she causes trouble.
I've told you. She's robbed me lippy.
Oh, Becky, come on.
Becky finds she can come and go as she pleases.
Becky!
Her files detail how, exasperated by her behaviour, staff can do little to control her. She absconds from the children's home more and more, going missing for days and nights at a time. Staff aren't allowed to physically stop her leaving, even though they have strong suspicions that when she runs away, she's being abused and prostituted.
Yeah? Is Becky in yet?
Nope.
Another all-nighter?
Going for the record.
Couldn't you have stopped her?
One finger from me and it's get off your rapist, I'll have the police on you.
We're responsible for her. Isn't that why we're called a care home?
Look, there's kids you can help and those you can't. Try your best, you know. If she wants to put herself at risk, there's not a lot we can do to stop her.
It's not right.
Didn't say it was. Look, you've got to look after yourself too in all this. You get too close, they'll tear you apart.
But you've seen her notes. You've read all the allegations.
Yeah, and about half of them are just that. She's wasted the police's time. She's wasting everybody's time. She's going to waste yours.
Right, Saz.
Where have you been?
Around. Doing stuff. Went to Leslie's.
Have you been drinking?
You're not supposed to go there. Isn't that where Dave Grant lives?
Fuck off you. I'm going to bed.
This will have to go in a book.
Whatever.
Put it down with all the others.
Social services say that in circumstances like this, there's nothing they can do.
We are bound by regulation, which is an appropriate set of regulation by and large, to not curtail young people's liberty. They have rights, human rights. The issue isn't one of the care home. It's an issue of the men who are prepared to have sex with children and pay money to have sex with children.
So where's it going wrong then? Is it that the police aren't doing enough? Because these people are breaking the law, let's not forget that.
Yes, but then if a young person doesn't provide evidence because they don't believe that they are being exploited, or say a 13 or 14-year-old girl goes missing for a weekend, and her pimp arranges for her to have sex with 30 or 40 men over that period, and then she comes back again, where's the evidence if she's not prepared to speak about what's happened to her, who she's been with?
We're outcasts and I felt like she really cared.
When Rachel was 15, she had a baby by a man who'd groomed her for sex. He was 22 years older than she was.
She really, really cared. I loved him to bits and I just had to cut him off, but because I've dealt with so much in life, it was a lot easier than what I thought. But it was an heavy blow, must admit. But you've got to do it, haven't you, when you're with somebody like that, because it's obviously was just using me. I was too naive at the time. Do you know what I mean? I was one of them, why, what, and he'd be like, just fill me head with shit.
But now that you're older, you can look back and see that that was a totally inappropriate relationship.
Yeah.
You realise you were used and that he was probably a paedophile.
It does me head in when I think back. Of course, I don't, right, because I've got a kid to him, I say to himself, it's not really a paedophile, Rachel, but he is. Because
you were 15?
I was underage.
Even Becky is beginning to realise that the older men in her life aren't what they seem. She tells people how they're becoming more manipulative and threatening.
Want to see my health worker?
Why?
Because I want a kid.
Becky, we're not having this conversation here.
I want a kid. And my boyfriend wants one. No point doing all this shagging for nothing.
You're being stupid.
I want a kid. Otherwise, I'll get my family.
What do you mean, Becky?
I mean, he threatens my family. If I don't meet him and give him what he wants, he threatens my family.
Following this incident, one of the care workers at the home wrote in Becky's case file about Becky's concerns for her own safety and the safety of her family. If her carers weren't already worried about her, according to experts we've consulted, they certainly should have been worried by now.
In terms of taking action, at every step of the way, a Section 47 should have been triggered, and that is a very urgent response from the authorities. It means the social services and the police meeting on that day. At that meeting, you make plans to how you're going to conduct an investigation, and that would lead to considering it. Do we need to take any immediate action to protect this child while we investigate?
While Becky's file reveals that social services recognise she's in significant danger, her situation appears to remain unchanged.
We're having this DVD or what?
Yeah, put on.
It's just like a kid's party. Stick to fucking pizza. I'm off.
Becky, you going nowhere? Come on.
Out of the fucking way!
No! Becky, you listen to me. This has to stop now.
Fucking lot of you!
Leave it, Sarah.
She shouldn't be going with that man!
Do your best. Just stick it in the book with all the other reports.
Yeah.
Even the police are pissed off. We say she's missing, they waste time looking. It's the same thing every time. Even if they do find her, she won't get in a bloody car. I'm telling you, secure unit's the only way with people like her.
There's got to be more we can do.
Look at her. She's out of here on her own free will.
She can't assess the risk.
Oh, rubbish.
What if the girl says Becky sleeps with men for money?
She's a fantasist. She's the one with the problem. I'm going to write this up, or am I?
Thought you said it was a waste.
It's procedure, though.
By now, the police are growing tired of looking for Becky every time she goes missing. It's a problem across the country. Police forces wasting what they see as valuable man-hours tracking down regular runaways and taking them home.
Hey! She pinched the shoes!
We know that the police do not see child protection as a police priority. It is lower down the line than burglary.
What, child protection is
Yes,
lower down
it
the
is.
list of priorities than burglary?
And child protection is not a police national performance target. That means they don't have to produce figures about how many successful the cases they have in protecting children.
In Becky's case, though, police do ask social services for her to be placed in secure accommodation for her own safety. But their request goes unheard.
There was some sort of spurious criteria about why she wasn't appropriate for secure provision. If I was the worker for this child in that meeting and I felt secure provision was appropriate, I would have pushed that forward strongly. The criteria for secure provision is about absconding. If she's likely to abscond and if she's likely to cause herself harm or others harm, Becky is absconding 36 times she ran away, and she is very likely risk. She's absolute risk of harm, of significant harm. So the criteria is there clearly.
There's good reason for the police to push for Becky to be placed in a secure unit. Her file reveals that there's another older man on the scene, Mike. He's in his 40s and they suspect he's a paedophile. Becky's absconding for days at a time. Care staff are powerless to act.
Morning, Becky. Will you give me a minute, please? Promise not to go on and on.
Didn't think you were on early.
I'm not. This is me enjoying myself. Why do you do it?
Do what?
Everything. What about your self-esteem?
You don't know one thing about my life.
Tell me then.
They treat me nice. Most of them.
Dave Grant didn't.
Not him. Mike don't do that. Mike saved me from Grant. He's like my shining knight, you know. Only he's got a car instead of a horse.
How old is Mike?
Doesn't matter.
But it does. It's abuse. He is manipulating you.
He gives me stuff. We go round days, we have Bacardi, fags, and he never lets me go away without putting something in my pocket. When I'm there, I don't feel ugly.
He's giving you attention. That's all it is. Making you feel special.
It's more than anyone else does.
That doesn't make it right. Does he ask for anything in return?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean.
No.
Come on, Becky.
We have a good time. What else is there to do? Being stuck around this shithole, going home. I do what I want.
But you're 14. Becky!
If the child is leaving the care home and everyone knows in the care home that she's going off to be sexually abused by a man, I mean, who is going to protect her? If not the care home, which is in loco parentis, who is going to protect that child? Nobody?
The regulations don't... The only protection that you're likely to succeed with in that very short, immediate window when a child's about to go is ultimately to lock a door on them, and that's illegal. The law takes the balance of civil liberties and human rights and says there has to be a really strong case of harm either to that young person or to somebody else.
But it's hard to think of a much stronger case for harm when you've got a 14-year-old girl who's going to be sexually abused by several men.
Yeah.
How much worse does it have to get before staff will feel that they must keep her indoors?
Well, the law prevents an ordinary community children's home from locking the doors and preventing children leaving. It's absolutely black and white. So if you wanted to physically prevent a young person from being sexually exploited in the conditions you're describing, then you have to apply for a secure accommodation order.
Secure accommodation, though, is very expensive. There's a shortage of places, and it involves locking a child up for 24 hours a day alongside other severely damaged children. But our experts believe that an investigation known as an organised abuse inquiry could have helped Becky.
The indicators of organised abuse are very clear. It just has to be more than one child and more than one abuser. With this child, there were 25 named alleged sexual abusers. That's enough to have organised abuse procedures.
They can't physically stop a young person going out of the building, but they are the eyes and ears for the young person and for the investigation. So if an organised abuse strategy was in place, the residential workers would be part of that strategy. They'd be very clear which officer to ring at that very second when a car pulls up with that actual number, so action can be taken to intercept the journey of that child in that vehicle within moments. But if the system isn't in place and they ring the local police officer or they just report the child missing, all these things, those systems don't trigger urgent action to protect the child.
There may be cases where an organised abuse procedure will work, and I'm aware of a couple of schemes around cities which are a magnet for prostitution. What police and social care workers are doing regularly is pooling their evidence and designing an investigation to fit the needs of the situation. So you don't actually need a formalised abuse procedure to deal with an issue like that. You need a systematic way of working together and gathering evidence.
Just doing a brew, do you want one?
Why won't you toast me, Becky?
Sarah, he makes me do things. Says that I owe him.
Owe him for what?
The stuff he gives me. The drink and the cigs. Says I've got to be nice to him. And there's always loads of them there.
You don't have to go.
I do. If I don't, he says he'll hurt me. And our Anna. I mean, how does he know my little sister?
We'll call the police.
Now you're being fucking stupid.
No, don't!
Oh, shit. He's outside.
Who is Mike?
Becky! I've told you, I've got him.
That takes some bottle.
He doesn't give a damn. I think she's untouchable.
Yeah, well, it's not far wrong.
We've just allowed someone that we're pretty sure is a paedophile
Take someone in our care back to a place where she'll be abused.
Can't lift a finger to do anything about it.
Look, I told you, you get too close. What are you going to do when the next Becky comes along? Because they will. If not next week, the week after that, or the week after that. You can only have time and energy for so many. The rest, you got to let go. I'll write this one. Let that prove, eh?
She was expected to pull herself away from the most, what seems like, were the most terrifying number of serious sexual predators in a network of abusers. From the way she spoke of the threats they put her under, threatening to kill her, her family, to stab her, punching her in the stomach, all these things. That's pretty scary for a 14, 15-year-old child.
One of the most shocking allegations Becky made involved the girlfriend of the suspected paedophile we've called Mike.
She's ready. Aren't you, love?
Becky claimed she'd been dolled up and then made to have sex with Mike and his friends.
He's like my shining knight, you know. Only he's got a car instead of a horse.
My overall impression for Becky is that there's been a series of opportunities along the way for professionals whose job it is to protect children. These opportunities have been lost. She's tried to help by telling the story, and each time she tells the story she's shut up. She's not heard, she's not listened to.
This child's voice has not been heard, and if you're looking at all the inquiries since 1945, we've had child abuse inquiries. Hundreds of children have died from abuse, and there's been subsequent inquiries. We have all the knowledge we need to know how to protect children, and the one clear message coming through again and again in all those years is listen to the voice of the child.
The worst case scenario for Becky is that she will be missed. She will be lost in this sea, this murky sea really of abusive networks. The very, very worst case scenario is that she dies, she disappears or dies. These things happen.
Bernardos believe that thousands of children across the UK are failed by the care system every year.
And that is because there's no proper protocols, which means there's no proper guidance in that area about how the people who are looking after the children should be trained, how they work together, how they speak and, talk to young people about what's happening to them. And therefore, of course, that means that those young people will be failed.
Becky is now 15 years old. She's now in foster care, but her future is still uncertain. And there are thousands of other Beckys out there tonight. We can only hope that their lives don't end up like Rachel's.
I really, truly, deeply, inside, don't believe I'll always do this. I think it'll be better. I think I'll do something else. Something will come up, because I'm always quite lucky like that, really. I'm still young and I still believe I've got a lot of life yet to change. I'm only 23 years old. Never meant to cause you no pain, baby, yeah. I just want to go back to being the same. Well, I only want to make things right, baby, before you walk out my life. Oh, yeah. I never meant to cause you no pain. Baby, believe me, I just want to go back to being the same. Well, I only want to make things right before you walk out of my life. Before you walk out my life.